So hi, everybody. I was told to do this in English because I'll be better for some of you. So I'll do my best with, of course, a few French words slipping in from time to time. So maybe I'll start by presenting myself. I think this is going to be a more smaller group. So I'm Serge Maynard. For the last year, I've been the coordinator of research at the CIUS West Central under the Academic Affairs Directorate. So in that role, I'm responsible both for overseeing our university institute, which is the University Institute, the TEJAS, then our rehab research team, and also responsible for the research review office, which is basically under that capacity that I'm here today. Throughout the presentation, I think we're a small group, so if you have any questions, I'm trying to look in online. If you send a question or whatever, I think I will be able to see your notification, so I'll go and see what your question is, but don't hesitate if you have any questions or need any more precision to ask me. So, basically, I think Alexander told me I needed to click on this for it to work. Okay, there you go. So for today, the presentation I'm going to give, there's going to be a first always more maybe theoretical point, but that's not what we're just going to go over that very broadly. I think the main reason I was invited here today was maybe to bring an update in terms of what's been going on at the Research Review Office. Following, for those who don't know, there was in 2021 a report that was published that was ordered by my director at the time, which was Cindy Stardino, to address some of the issues that were going on at the Research Review Office. So the bulk of my presentation maybe will be focused on that, what's being put in place. I mean, since the last year I've been in my function and looking ahead what we're working towards. And I think we're gonna be able to have a lot of exchanges, maybe gather some ideas on how we can improve the way we work. So starting with maybe the obvious, I'm not going to spend too much time here. I thought there might be some students or coordinators present during the presentation. So maybe to get into some key distinctions between what we do at my office and what we might be looked at in terms of clinical ethics. Clinical ethics, of course, focuses a lot more on patient care and decision-making with patients, whereas research ethics is more based on human participants who are volunteers. There's clinical ethics is more looking into what involves decision-making about moral dilemmas. And when you're looking at research, it's that there's a whole lot that tries to look into ensuring participant voluntariness and weighing the risks, harm against the potential benefits of research. On one hand, clinical ethics is about more consultation, whereas research ethics, it's making sure that all the regulatory rules are being followed by researchers. So there's another distinction I think and there's a lot of gray area in this one, so that might be confusing to some. What's the difference between a quality improvement project and a research project? For those that are clinicians or working in a clinical setting, sometimes it's hard to distinguish why one might fall into a quality improvement process and a research process. So the slides I put up will be available after the presentation. I'm not necessarily going to get into the specifics because some of you, I think, are well aware of the difference. But if we look at the quality improvement projects, if you look at the objective, the goals are really more linked to the organizational context and improving whether it be departments or the organization itself, improving treatments or improving processes, whereas research is more looking towards generating and validating theories. The approach itself, where the methodology, when you're in a quality improvement project, maybe it's a bit less strict in terms of what you're doing. You're more in an iterative approach to things, whereas research, well, there's more rigorous scientific and involving trying to control the conditions under which you're doing your research. Time frame usually way more shorter when you're looking at quality improvement projects than longer for research. Evaluation, again, when you're talking about quality improvement projects, it focuses on specific performance indicators Whereas research, emphasizes on validity, reliability, and replicability. The stakeholders themselves, again, quality improvement, we're more looking at the organizational stakeholders, where research community, the academic community, funding bodies, and the broader public, the government often also. So once you've determined what's the difference, like if you're actually submitting a research project, I think there's a confusion in terms of where do you submit? When do you submit to our office, the research review office, or when do you submit to the university? Well, basically, any project that involves patients, that involves resources, staff, anything that has to do within the healthcare or the healthcare system needs to go through a health research ethics board. The distinction maybe we might have at my office is that there is an agreement between McGill and our office in terms of does the McGill research board recognize our evaluations? They do for projects that are entirely done in the healthcare system. That can even be in another organization if it's a multi-centric study. If you submit through us, the McGill will recognize our ethics. But for any other research that involves collecting data, whatever in the community or anywhere else but the healthcare system, researchers will need both certificates. This is new because our contract used to cover all research, but as of this year, McGill didn't want to. They want to take the risk. The word risks, I think, involved in terms of recognizing our board for research done in the community.
Yeah, excuse me. Can you define what you're saying, McGill?
McGill.
You're saying CIUS. CIUS includes the LDI?
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's a community, we would need both CIUS and McGill.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This is new. Like it.
New since when?
Since May of this year. I
Okay.
would say. I think I saw the contract go by. We were negotiating with McGill, and like McGill is outside. Like any other project that aren't done in the healthcare system need to.
Are you gonna walk us through the process
Of
of having this? We do community work. What's the process? I mean, we get it, we certify here and then McGill?
both. You can do both at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is. I know that's.
They have two different views of a lot of things.
Yeah, I think what's recommended though is to get the certificate from my office, because that usually will weigh in terms of when you submit to McGill. I can make sure, I can send you that information. I want to make sure I'm giving you the right information, but technically, I think it's recommended that you submit for the healthcare, like whatever.
So when you say community, does it apply outside the catchment area of the hospital or the CIUS?
If it doesn't, as long as it doesn't involve patients, because patients can be outside of our catchment area, it's not necessarily the catchment area.
Okay.
If it's linked to our organization in any way or form. So that's why
But we're linked to the organization, we're employees. C'est ça, je comprends pas.
that really,
Tu sais, comme moi, par exemple, je vais vraiment prendre ça parce que
avec
il y en a qui comprennent. Moi, je fais souvent de la recherche. Les étudiants font souvent de la recherche avec le recrutement de patients. Je comprends la pertinence d'appliquer ici. Je fais surtout de la recherche dans la communauté, pas avec des patients. Mais moi, je suis attachée au LDR, je suis chercheur au LDR. Donc, est-ce que je suis obligée quand même d'appliquer au LDR? Le comité d'éthique de
vous êtes employé de McGill ou vous êtes
je suis employée de McGill et du LDR.
Oui. Vous passez par McGill.
Fait que je passe par McGill,
Oui.
je n'ai pas besoin de passer par le LDR. OK, donc, même si vous...
C'est vraiment l'objet de la recherche et non le chercheur. C'est comme le chercheur, si vous êtes employé de McGill, c'est vraiment pour une question d'assurance qu'ils ont.
Mais je suis employée des deux également. Là.
Mais là, vu que.
Je suis payée par les deux, moi.
Oui, effectivement, puis quand vous faites une recherche plus dans la communauté, c'est comme votre chapeau, votre assurance en tant que telle, entre guillemets, va être couverte en tant que sur votre chapeau de professeur à McGill.
OK.
Ouais.
Mais si je fais une recherche qui implique des patients,
Les deux, t'as besoin de deux. Ouais.
c'est là que j'ai besoin
Ben, des patients et c'est tout. Si c'est seulement dans le réseau de la santé, tu n'as pas besoin des deux. C'est ça l'entente maintenant, l'entente active pour ça.
OK. Si c'est seulement dans le réseau de la santé puis qu'on recrute des patients, des employés,
Juste
là, on a juste besoin d'appliquer à...
Les deux, vous avez besoin des deux, puis si c'est juste dans la communauté, mais ça négocie.
Mais c'est parce que là, vous dites que c'est dans la communauté, j'ai juste besoin de
Oui.
j'ai pas besoin des deux.
Non, exactement, c'est ça.
Si c'est des patients, j'ai besoin des deux.
Oui.
Pourquoi?
Ben, en fait, excusez-moi, c'est des patients, mais qui sont pas, qui sont là. Il y a aussi des données qui sont collectées dans la communauté, entre guillemets. Si c'est juste des patients du jour, peu importe, uniquement besoin du certificat.
Donc, on n'a pas besoin de McGill à ce moment-là.
Non, pour ces cas-là, c'est ça.
Mais quels sont les cas où on
Quand
a besoin
100% de la recherche se déroule dans le réseau de la santé, c'est seulement le certificat d'éthique de McGill si ça implique 100%. Il n'y a pas de données qui sortent de.
Si c'est 100% ben non, je comprends plus rien.
100% des données concernent soit des patients, soit sur l'établissement du Jewish ou du CIUS. Vous avez juste besoin d'un certificat
Du Jewish. Pas de McGill.
Pas de McGill.
OK.
Si c'est une recherche qui va chercher des données dans les deux contextes,
Là, on peut appliquer aux deux.
aux deux exactement. Puis c'est uniquement 100% dans le contexte communautaire, là, on n'a pas besoin d'expliquer.
OK. Pourquoi il faut appliquer aux deux?
Okay, so I'm gonna complicate this.
Yeah,
Completely,
I didn't expect that.
completely community,
Yeah,
but we're using facilities at the LDF. We're bringing people into the LDF.
yeah.
What
You're
we-
using material, as long as you're using resources in any capacity.
Okay, so we
You're using
bring
your
them
system.
into a room at the LDI, we need both.
Okay, that one I would need to, I need to ask for a lawyer.
I'm just,
Yeah.
because
No, that one I
these are
would need to ask
situations
for a
that could be occurring.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're doing community work, but. Okay.
That one, it's a lawyer type of question for that one, yeah.
Yeah.
And he did produce a table, maybe I can share with you guys. So maybe I can share that after the.
We would need it very specific, but.
Yeah. Because
Because,
I don't think there was any communication done with, the change in terms of this contract that we used to have with the, again.
because when we tried to do something. Bringing people in to the LGI, McGill, this was before May 24th. Told us we needed the LDI, and that's it.
Yeah.
So now.
Because it used to be, you could have LDI for whatever research you did. They used to recognize even for community that, so it would apply before May 24th. But now these questions are
We
raised.
need a very detailed list of where we go.
But this is retrospective or is it like everything still, meaning if we were.
No, the
if we were
certificates that are in
given
place
ethics
are, no,
in March, if we were given ethics in March.
Right,
Then that goes forward, it's fine.
yeah, it's under the.
But anything new
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
if we're collecting, okay, well, we're gonna, I know we can spend a lot of time on
yeah,
this.
but we'll need it very
And-
careful where it goes.
Like I said, not a lawyer, so I like the contract itself, some of the details, like the broader the strokes of the.
Okay,
Yeah,
no,
I
no,
Just
that's
have
good.
a different point to clarify. Under quality improvement, it still allows you to publish.
Yeah, it does. So that's something like, I think whenever it's in a gray area, the right thing to do is consult us, but because it doesn't mean like a lot of times you think because it's a quality improvement project, you can't publish, depends on the journal itself.
Yeah, you can publish,
Highly recommend it.
and you just need a letter from, you have to
Yeah.
approach the research office with specific ethics for the publication.
And we write a letter saying, because some journals will require you to validate that you didn't
It's
need.
just a letter.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not long though.
That's the one
Because-
present at a conference, it's the same thing, you have to approach them, say, I want to present at a conference, and
Yeah.
they'll give you a.
Yeah. So, and that's not that's a fairly simple process, as long as the project was started under the quality improvement act.
I'm sorry, I think I missed this, but why is there this additional requirement in McGill now?
Lawyers, risk
Lawyers.
assessment, yeah.
Yes,
It's because they,
Protection of the institution.
yes, exactly. That's what
That's
it is.
it.
That's it.
So it's, if you're doing, you're in the community and they wanted to know if our insurance would cover what you were doing while in the community. And that was not 100% clear to them,
Okay,
so they
Yeah.
decided to withdraw that clause from the.
so even with non-clinical community health from the general population, this applies.
No, but you said the contrary before. Because if you're a professor at McGill, you're covered by McGill ethics.
By regular ethics,
If you do community research. You have to approve patients, did I understand?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You're legally covered as a McGill professor.
Oh, you are, okay,
Exactly, it's
So
just
So you
what,
don't have to,
so I don't have to worry about it.
but
Yeah.
because you have a certificate from McGill, the McGill ethics.
Yeah, I mean, it was approved by the Jewish general. I don't think when I give it to the grants office at McGill.
Yeah,
That
Pre
to
two thousand
continue my
twenty-four,
funding.
but that.
Yeah.
It's fine, whatever you're recruiting, we would be recognized for any context, we would recognize us for any context.
Okay, but now the same project, I'll need both or no, because I'm a McGill investor.
Yeah, you can only go through McGill, so, but. I'll look at the table, like our lawyer produced a table for,
Yeah.
like, for.
Yeah, please, very, very helpful.
I think so, yeah.
Me, what I'm wondering is the distinction between patient recruitment and the community. So let's say you do ethnographic work with people in the community, homeless people who happen to be patient, and you talk about their patient experience. Are we still in the community?
Yeah, well, that was my next
What is
question.
the kind of their real life question that?
It is, but it,
That was not a patient.
Well,
Well, it's
yeah,
patient.
so what's patient recruitment? Is it when it's formally in the clinic and then every?
I would submit that to like the actual, like McGill, because to me,
Yeah,
would be a McGill, I cannot.
They just will happen to be a patient, but you're not going after them because they are.
And it's not in the context of the care they're receiving, if it was through a, for example, like we have some programs that outreach programs or whatever for homeless, or then in that context, yes. But because the whole population could be patients a lot of.
Yeah, so I guess it depends if you're actually recruiting. And then-
Within that like scope in
Yeah.
terms of saying, because we're evaluating the care you're receiving,
Because they are a patient,
the resources you got there,
not
but
because they have to do.
yeah, but I would question, like you can always write to both boards and make sure. it's well.
I know, it's really important to be talked about this since May 24th.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised. The communication sometimes is always, yeah, because this seemed like we try to push back and McGill didn't. So, yeah, it's mainly for the researchers that it's gonna
I have
happen.
another question before you start on to the next slide.
Yeah.
What about evaluation research? Because you can do evaluation.
Yeah.
In an administrative setting or perspective, right? But you can also do evaluation in the context of research.
Yeah,
So where does it fit?
and quality improvement or research, you mean?
Yeah,
That you need to consult us, like you can submit to the quality improvement team and because we're starting to work with them. Because there's a lot of gray and.
yeah, there's a lot of gray.
Typically, the distinction would be, you need to have somebody sign consent because they're consenting to something changing in the care they normally get.
But you can do evaluation research with non-professionals. You're evaluating, for example, the implementation of a new model of care. So your participants are not patients, they're medical doctors, they're nurses, they're administrators.
Because that's what I'm doing, this new mobile crisis team. And that was appropriate for the quality. And we're analyzing all the patient data.
So it could but that it's not like
Team is
those projects.
And I am not changing the service with my, it's really a kind of, well, it's basically almost program implementation. Right?
I don't know if you consulted with the board, like, because there's the quality improvement director, you can.
Yeah, I asked them. If
And if
it
they
was
said-
appropriate, they said yes.
Yeah. And when they're not sure, they send it to us.
Yeah, I'm assuming that
Yeah,
that's their job to identify what's appropriate.
if
to them or not.
they have questions in terms, like if they approved it, usually we're gonna honor that, so even if they didn't consult us, like if quality okayed it. So you need to see with them, if it's a quality improvement, they need to okay it anyway, so that will be determined at the entry, sort of the project.
But quality improvement is faster, if I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll try that.
No, it's a good strategy, for a lot of projects, it's a good strategy, that said, you need to be aware that it might block you from some publications, it might block you, but that's something you can weigh the pros and cons, what's your bigger objective. But it's quicker, quality improvement projects are quicker.
It blocks you from what publication I was told.
It depends on the project, like that's for the journals themselves to determine though, like, yeah, I'm not saying. That's why, like, I don't know, depending on the journal, some might say, we don't publish quality improvement projects. So moving on. So I thought I'd go back maybe into like, once you know that you need to submit, what's the whole process? There's, I don't know if all of you are aware, but any project, like, it's not just getting the ethics certificate, but there is a triple evaluation that's done, and it's going to open some questions for later on in terms of what we do at the RO. So it's basically a three-tiered process in terms of like what we evaluate. There's a scientific evaluation, an ethics evaluation, and a institutional authorization feasibility evaluation that's done. Basically, before even you can submit your project, and again, you need research privileges. Well, I won't get into the details because I'm gonna touch on that topic later on in the presentation. But like when you get it to Nagano, scientific evaluation, the standard is if it's a peer-reviewed study, then we don't need to do it. That's going to be recognized. And if not, then we need to have it evaluated by our scientific committee. Ethics evaluation, I think you're all aware of the process, so that's maybe not necessary to get into too much details. And then there's the last part, usually that some researchers or new researchers are not aware of, is that even though you have your ethics certificate, you still need the authorizing feasibility from the CIUS. That means if you're using any resources, let's say you're using nursing, then nursing needs to sign off on your project saying, I have the resources and I agree with the project. Same with any resources being used at the CIUS, you need to approach that department. And that's going to be flagged anyways through Nagano when you describe it. And we're going to ask you to, like, if you're recruiting nurses to interview them, then the director needs to okay it. So once you get all three approvals, you're good to go. You get institutional authorization and you're good to go to do research.
So it's directors of all the clinical departments that are involved.
It depends, like it could be human resources, any resources you're using. If you're coaching employees like that work in the finance department, then you would need to go there. If you're using any equipment from the hospital, then.
But that's part of the Nagano process.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So if you get approved by Nagano, it has to go through the feasibility, even though you've already approached.
A lot of it happens without you even knowing it. Like when you submit to Nagano, we're gonna, like my team, there's somebody from my team that's gonna write, I have this project, do you agree with it? Like the researchers are gonna want to recruit 4 nurses from your department, and we do that internally. Bigger projects usually need some negotiations, like if you're using a lot of resources, hospital beds or
I
whatever.
understand.
Yeah.
But then if it's already been approved in the Nagano process, what's the feasibility step now? Isn't it just duplicating what you've already done?
I'm not sure.
Because if I'm using resources.
Nagano is where you declare what you're gonna do. With
Yeah,
your project.
and in there, I need letters of approval from all these institutions.
Yeah.
All these areas. But they've already,
If you have them, then the process is done within minutes, like.
but you can't go beyond, okay. Anyways, the way Nagano sounds, you can't go on unless you have those approvals.
But
So I'm trying to figure out what.
But you still have to internally verify with the concerned departments whose resources we're gonna use that it's feasible.
I get
We
the
submit.
requests for mental health, I get the requests.
Yeah.
Myself and the director of mental health.
Okay.
We each approve it.
Oh,
We
okay.
get emails saying, we've approved this.
When
Which
it's approved,
director does
I know that has
This
already
is-
been done, but it gets done.
Yeah, the final approval, and Nagano is like, is when you submit the whole project,
Yeah.
because of your protocol and whatnot, what resources you're gonna use and whatnot, and then. Like, if the letters are already there and they're recent, then it goes through without.
Okay. Are you, can we talk about cybersecurity?
We can at the Varia, but
Because that's what I just came across recently.
that's another Pandora's box, but.
Yeah,
I know,
it
I'm
was.
involved enough to
Okay,
speak on it.
and this came as complete shock afterwards, that we had to go through a secondary.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity issue, which is nowhere indicated anywhere.
Data security is not like we are
It's not
updating.
data security, it's cybersecurity.
Yeah.
We're using.
It's part of the umbrella under data security. Cybersecurity
Okay.
is a new thing that's like that's in place. And created the modules that like to make sure, like to help them maybe evaluate the projects a
Okay.
bit quicker.
Okay.
Well, but we'll get there because it's something new, and I know it's been narrated for a lot of researchers because it can delay.
Oh, 6 weeks.
But that's in terms of like, that's when researchers should put pressure on their scientific director or whatnot when they have these issues so that they're aware of it. And then Dr. Robbins, for example, can put some pressure on Dr. Rosenberg for us to have like, because they need the resources, like this is following a new law that was put in place and without adding any resources to what they're doing already. So where was I at? So maybe looking into, because we're gonna get into the real like workings of my office. Like I said, some of you might be aware or not, there were some big issues that were noticed in terms of the way we worked, the way resources were, we were being able to approve projects. So there was a big report that was asked to make recommendations. I know Dr. Rosanna was much involved in putting through these recommendations, but basically what the report wanted to do is bring us back to the principles of what we do. And that is that research ethics is about protecting participants and supporting the ethical and responsible conduct of research. That's the meaning that I think we were at a point where protecting participants was way high, especially for when you look at proportionality of risk. That was a hard one to get out. And not sort of taken into consideration the second element, that means having a healthy institution where research can be conducted. And the second big point that they wanted to bring us back, principle they wanted to bring us back to, was the ethics review must occur in a healthy institutional context that ensures the provision of necessary resources, personnel, documentation, and infrastructure. So mainly the recommendations basically fall under these because we needed to put that in place in order to create a healthier context for the conduct of research. So the report had 5 big recommendations for those that don't know. One was based on developing a culture of research ethics within the institution. That might have been an issue where it wasn't valorized enough. So we had to work on that to making sure that the institution would value this. Develop, implement appropriate policies and procedures to ensure the good governance and functioning of research ethics, because the absence of standards made it so that it was often unclear how we would answer researchers, and sometimes they would get one answer and then talk to somebody else and get another answer because we didn't have any standards to abide by. We're still working on that, but we're going through a big list of policies that need to be put in place. Facilitate the effective and timely evaluation of projects by the REB. That's a big one, and I'll get into it later on. Ensure both the REB committees always have necessary and competent membership. That's also something we will see in the next slides that we worked on. And provide systematic training so that REB members, ethics specialists have all the necessary competencies. I'm trying to make sure I'm going to have enough time to go through everything. I think the last slides are going to be interesting for you guys. But so in order to respond to the first recommendation, and I'm not going to go too much into that right now because I'm going to present the new structure soon, but we put in place in the last year, put in place a new structure, a new way for the REB to work so that to improve a lot of what we are doing. We put in place membership remuneration. That was something that was not in place, and that was both a stop to recruitment of new members, but also kind of tells you something about how we value their work. It was voluntary, but everywhere else in the province, they would get some compensation for what they were doing. And we are also making sure that there's annual meetings between the CIUS board, under which the ethics board fall, the presidents, the chair fall, to make sure that if they were sort of redevable, they were accountable for what they were doing. So if ever the CEO was aware or is made aware of research problems or whatnot, then there's that annual meeting where they can address those issues. So again, like I said, we put in place a new cadre réglementaire la recherche and worked a lot of on SOP, standard operating procedures. Timely fashion, that's one of the things we did, still in the implementation process, but we, in terms of the timely evaluation of projects, we embedded those in SOPs so that we're holding our institution, the board, and everybody to some type of timelines. I'm going to get to them later on. And we put in place a staff dedicated to quality control and gatekeeping. Again, I might get into that later on a little bit, but because one of the biggest issues we had was quality of the research we'd receive. And it's the whole 80-20 rule. We'd be spending 80% of our time on 20% of the projects that were problematic and did not have the resources to do that. So by putting somebody at gatekeeping, if the project had some standards of quality, we'd accompany the researchers or the students through the process. And if not, we started implementing, we're just returning to center. This is not a good project, not a good protocol. We'd close the project and ask them to resubmit later. That's what we're doing currently. But we're trying to be even more transparent in this and making sure people understand the standards when we're returning a project without even making comments or whatnot to make sure that they have the tools to do that. And for the timely evaluation, I'll get to that later on also. It's really a question of putting in place that culture change in terms of the way the projects are evaluated, going back to what, like I said, the principles that need to govern any board, ethics board. We put in place a membership drive. I put with mitigated results. We did for the NVM find some projects. I think today the part of the presentation was also towards working towards that goal. If ever, researchers that want to be involved in, the more that we have on our list in terms of members, the more we're able to. We can rely. We don't need to cancel any meetings because we have the necessary quorum for evaluations. And we also have an ethics specialist dedicated to training staff, researchers, and whatnot. So those are the main items we've been working on. What I wanted to present today, maybe one of the things I wanted to present today is the research privileges. We revamped this, and this might seem like detail, but there were two big goals in doing that. It was to clarify and improve the process because we sort of had researchers that had privileges that weren't even affiliated with the institution anymore, were working elsewhere, but still conducting research here. And we wanted to clarify when we would take back privileges from researchers. And also, again, link privileges to quality of submissions. That's it's linking the fact that you're submitting a project here, even if it's a student that's doing it in your name or coordinator, the researcher is accountable for the quality of the research. So if it's not a good enough quality, let's say it's a student, then we return them to their supervisor saying they did not do their job. They're supposed to be your mentors. They're supposed to help you write a good protocol. So that was the idea of making sure that when we give research privileges, people are aware that it comes with sort of obligations. Ensure proper knowledge of laws, policies, and ethics. That's another issue we were having, is that basic ethical issues were not addressed in the submissions. So we wanted to make sure, if ever they weren't addressed, that we'd be able to return the projects to the researchers themselves.
Sorry, can I interrupt you?
Yes, sure.
So when you apply for McGill, if you're presenting a graduate student project for approval, it's still under the supervisor, the professor, that's the PI, that's the PI.
Yeah.
A student can't just go and submit. The PI is the responsible person, which is the research director.
Yeah.
So is it the same?
It's the same. So a student cannot submit a project. It has to be done through it's the supervisor that has research privileges, and that's why we were receiving some projects that supervisor did not do their jobs in terms of quality, protocol, and whatnot. So we want to put back the responsibility on the shoulders of researchers, which it should be. This is not really our role. But like I said, we're not just refusing any projects.
And now you're speaking, now you're speaking about evaluation from the ethics committee or the research committee?
This is the ethics committee. Well, they do both. Gatekeeping does both. Does it sort of, because there's some standard elements you will need to have in the protocol, and you don't need to be if you don't have it, we received some projects that are just bullet points without
But I mean, usually if you said that, you said before that projects need to be submitted for research about,
Yeah.
for research review,
Yeah.
if it was not already reviewed by granting agency, for example.
If it's not, yeah, because if it is, then profile would be a problem.
So if it passes that, either granting agency or research review here, then when it arrives for ethical approval, it should be fine.
If it's been peer reviewed, yeah. Yes.
So why are you saying it applies to ethics then? Ethics
It,
review?
no, this is gatekeeping. This is even before it gets on
okay.
our, like,
Okay,
this is making
Sorry
sure
about
it has the minimal scientific ethics components, but like if it's a peer reviewed project, there's no way that is gonna be blocked for that. So it's, yeah, so it's often these are researcher initiated, like a clinician or researcher initiated projects or student projects, the ones that don't make it through. And also using the whole process of research privileges to try to recruit members saying, well, you have privileges at our establishment. Please get back to the community if you can, when you can. It's not an obligation, but it's just reminding that by having the privilege to do research here, you can also get back to the community. I'm not gonna go into the details of that much in terms of research privileges with the categories, but basically just to mention that there are three. The way it's always been is if you're a member of the LBI, a regular member of the LBI, Sherpa, Kejais, or Kriya, it's an automatic thing that's done. The only thing that we're going to be putting in place is that when we have the electronic form in place, when you submit, it's going to be a very streamlined process for those researchers just to revalidate that you have research privileges, but it's mainly going to be this is mainly done so that all researchers will go through a common commitment page that I'll show you in the next slide. But the other category, external researchers, those are for researchers that aren't affiliated with any of our research centers, but that want to conduct research here, then they need to get research privileges, and those privileges are always linked to the project itself. So if they're doing two projects, they need to do the process all over again. And the last category is clinician researcher, which is basically an ECS practitioner, that's a pharmacist holding privileges either by CNDP or any professional organization. So that I'm not going to get into the details again, but the idea of putting in place this new process, even for regular researchers right now, is just to make sure that they tick off those boxes saying, I have the correct formation, I have the correct, I'm making sure I stand by the quality of whatever is submitted, either if it's in my name, by a coordinator or a student, I stand by the quality. And that allows us, if ever we're having problems at the gatekeeping, we can say, well, we took this engagement, but did not follow through on that. And the last element is to, like I said, ask researchers if we can contact them to be part of our research ethics board. So very quickly, I'll get into the new structure that was put in place for the REB. The idea here was really to get to the harmonization of practices. I think one of the biggest frustrations was that if you submitted to the MBM, you'd have sort of a specific timeline, specific responses and whatnot, and to the psychosocial board, you'd have maybe another reality. So we wanted to make sure that we were looking at harmonizing our practices, making sure also there's new research realities that affect both subcommittees, mainly AI projects that can affect both, and making sure our decisions, policies are standardized across the board. So that was last year. We sort of asked the board of this year's to put in place a structure where we have one president, un président, one chair of the whole REB, who's accountable to the Conseil d'Administration. Like I can send this out. I'm not necessarily going to explain everything, but like I don't know if you know this, but a research ethics boards relève of the board and answers to the board. And my office here is more under the directorate. So we're there to support them administratively speaking, and also help the two subcommittees. And the structure that was put in place is to have that president be president also of a board, and go get another president for the psychosocial committee, which we did. There's Dr. Margulies for the NBM, and he's also the president of the REB. So again, if there's a decision or any disagreements, he's the last person to make a decision. And Catherine Rodrigue, who started with us as of February this year. So we're starting to put in place new things with them. The idea was to change the structure, but to make sure, again, like I said, that we're going to have a more harmonized way of evaluating projects. Whatever subcommittee you submit to, you should be having the same standards. And
Question for you, is the academic affairs, direction of academic affairs, are they involved in this?
sorry, yeah, maybe I went through it quickly. That's the academic affairs directorate. So we were mainly responsible for suggesting to the board this new structure, like making sure we were more like when there's complaints or whatever, we're always involved. But they want to make sure that there's an independence of the ethics board in terms of like I cannot talk to Dr. Margulies and like there's no like organizational links.
So who reports to the director of academic affairs?
I do.
You?
Yeah, I do. So that's me here, and that's Kathleen there, and then those are their specialists. Those that no Kathleen like that, but she's there. But she's also a specialist who support the different chairs of our subcommittees. So that's why there's sort of two structures, and like our CEO is in the middle because he technically answers to the board also. So that's making sure that there's an independence of the ethics board.
What is MDM?
Medical, biomedical. So I don't think I have time to get into the details. Maybe just look into what we're doing right now. I mentioned it's good to change the structure, but what we're really actually trying to work on is, and we have the backing of both our presidents' chairs on this, is to bring about somewhat of a culture change, specifically for the psychosocial board, which sort of tended to go on a tangent that was not necessarily advantageous for researchers. I mean, there was some des constats qui ont été faits. Like if you look at the delays, for example, and we started showing this to the evaluators themselves, so that they understand what the issues are. If you look, for example, in 2023-24, the differences between evaluations are quite important. NBM was 88 days turnaround, where psychosocial was 335 days, which shouldn't be acceptable. But like we say, usually there are smaller projects, have smaller financing, but if you lose a year of your finance just getting your ethics, if you're a student, that uses your life plan. So we're really trying to bring that down. There are some outside realities that were out of control in terms of membership. When we didn't have enough members, that was an issue to get projects evaluated. But there are things that we need to do internally in terms of the way the projects are being evaluated.
Sorry,
yeah.
So you used to have how many members before all this organizational change?
Oh, I have to, and it's also the issue with psychosocial is the specialties, because in MBM it's more like it's clinical research oncology, like you have way less specialties, whereas psychosocial is a larger array, so you need way more members to be able to evaluate. Like if you need specifically for a scientific evaluation, you need specialists in way more.
So now there's how many?
I don't have to number.
Now, what is it?
How
How
many?
many members?
And there is and the number of members is not that much, like it's the number of active members, because
Okay, then active members.
yeah, no, because I could have the numbers for you, but like active members that we can have a member we send a project to, because most of the projects are evaluated in a delegated way, meaning that they don't go to a third
So
board
it's
meeting.
ad hoc evaluations.
Yeah, ad hoc evaluation.
All of them, or just you have?
Most of
regular-
them, I would say, like if you look at the numbers, full board meetings, where it's.
Yeah, 5390.
Exactly.
5390.
Yeah.
For
90?
a psych, it's 4 and 22.
Yeah, full board studies, you have 4 here and 53 for the MBM.
That's the meetings.
Yeah, full board meetings, and then you have the delegated studies. I don't know, there was a pointer here. Delegated studies are here. So for
What's that mean, delegated studies?
it's ad hoc evaluations. It's that we don't wait till because technically there should be 12, there's 12 psychosocial board meetings that are planned every year, but most of them are canceled due to lack of membership, not that much, but often it's most of the studies can be evaluated in a delegated fashion because they're low-risk projects. But that means that my staff still needs the quorum in terms of having a scientific evaluation, ethics evaluation, and whatnot. So, yeah. Does that answer the question?
They're gonna answer this, but I think what's changed is that it's not like how many members there are for each subcommittee. It's like there's a pool and you only need one or two specifically for psychosocial or biomedical.
Yeah.
But the other members can be shared across the committees. So it means that the membership is a lot more.
Yeah, that's what we're putting in place right now. It's like for ethics,
They don't run out.
a jurist with somebody with because you need somebody who has a juristic expertise, ethics expertise, and scientific expertise. So those are the main ones, and it's the scientific component that's harder for us to have the bigger.
Maybe they're supposed to be all the same days.
Yeah.
Stop, so you block that day, whichever. They're like straight lines, in the same time.
Yeah, so right now they're meeting at the same time, and if ever there's issues like we don't have enough members for one of the meetings, then that's moving forward, looking into combining some board meetings to be able to make sure we evaluate all projects at the same time.
So you don't outsource evaluations. You don't, let's say there's no expertise, you won't contact an ad hoc researcher in Quebec that has expertise in that area that can give you, because you said you paid them. So would you offer them?
Maybe this is something I did mention, but all members need to be approved by the board, by the CS board. So that process means that they needs to be approved to like at a conseil d'administration. They have their meetings. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
If you're a researcher by definition. I mean, you're hired.
It's just with it's check and balance because all members that are proposed, like we submit this to we have an academic affairs committee who's led by Dr. Fellows at McGill, and they need technically to approve. That's done by email though to vet all research, like all the research, and it's shown that we vetted some researchers that she was aware of issues with the researcher which we were not aware of, which sort of made us back off on our decision to add this to our evaluating list in terms of, anyways, like, I'm not going to get into the details, but still by law, all members need to be appointed by the conseil d'administration, and they have meetings every 1 to 2 months. So when we receive the time it would take for us to have one member approved, and it's actually getting the researcher to agree, because it's not, we compensate them, but it's not what was actually meant here if they're small big. So yeah. I see I have 5 minutes left, but the idea, what we're trying to get back to is recentering the role of the REB. Yes, protection, safety, and well-being of participants is very important, but we want to bring back, and this is something we're working with the members themselves, is having this notion of proportionality of risk, especially in psychosocial studies. The risk often is not high enough, so they need to dose their comments with that in mind, and we're actually giving them training to sort of, because some of them just aren't equipped and they don't want to take the risk that some of them have gotten a bit too risk averse. But when we need to bring them back to understanding, yes, there's a risk and zero risk doesn't exist, but if we want to be functioning as a research institute, we need to sort of balance them out. So all the 3 points are regarding risk, and evaluation must respect the researchers' choices. This is something that we were seeing some of the comments, and this is we consulted with researchers. You'd get comments for a peer-reviewed project, and you'd have questions on your methodology. That shouldn't happen if it's peer-reviewed. There shouldn't be any comments. So we're trying to bring it back to that. It can be put in as a suggestion, but if the researcher decided to evaluate, for many reasons, resources, you can always do better, but often we're limited in resources. So we're trying to limit those comments or make them just as suggestions where researchers or applicants can say, thank you for the comment, but I'll pass, and making sure we distinguish them from actual exigence to get required changes to get ethical approval. And maybe the last slide is this has been accepted. 2 months ago, I think by when we said we wanted to have like our one president, this is the delays we're gonna strive to implement. And we're actually not that bad. I'm putting in place a tableau bar, Power BI tableau bar to make sure we're following and respecting those delays. And when we don't, then we need to know why and be accountable for that. So again, I might not necessarily get into all the details of the tables, but if you see the ideal interval is always what's in the SOP, but the maximum interval would usually concern these are more NBM standards, and this is something that would concern more psychosocial projects, but that's to be expected. It takes more time to evaluate. It's like I said, there's a bit more complexity. So we're still leaving more time for psychosocial projects to be evaluated, but we're trying to really bring it down to something that's a bit more reasonable. That's it.